A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine with Pick n Pay on another cold night up here in Johannesburg. Not just cold because of the weather, but cold because of that gloom and doom that our wine sales are currently on hold. And if you watched last night with the live tasting that we did with Ruben Rothschild and Lamotte celebrating Bastille Day, which we are celebrating this week as well, paying tribute to all of our friends down in the Huguenot Valley of Franschhoek, I did discuss my hope that there is some middle ground to be found and that we can open up the wine industry in particular, which has really taken a battering over the last while, and where a lot of jobs are in jeopardy, a lot of people's livelihoods at risk, and a lot of our wine estates facing a real struggle just to stay alive. And so to that end, I would implore you, if you can, to keep buying wine, even if it's only getting delivered in the next few weeks once our new lockdown is done. Join that Pick n Way Wine Club, get hold of the wine estate, keep supporting the industry, or buy wine tomorrow, which you can, just not in South Africa. You can, of course, if you are in the UK or elsewhere in the world where South African wine is available for sale. And you can also taste South African wine, because coming up on the 22nd of July is a really special event. You might have seen on the Dan Really Likes Wine social media channels, on the Wines of South Africa social media channels, or most important of all, on Greg Sherwood's social media channels last week, that we launched the South African Wine Tribe, which we kind of alluded to not that long ago in conversation with Jo Waring from Wines of South Africa. She looks after the UK market and does a brilliant job. And we thought about it both in conversation during the live tasting we had, but also afterwards. What can we do to get a bit more South African wine into the market and to spread the gospel of the South African industry? And so we've launched the South African Wine Tribe. It's a very simple wine club where every couple of months you'll get 3 bottles of wine selected by Greg Sherwood, master of wine, expert on South African wine in particular, and the man behind Hanford Wines, the wine emporium in South Kensington. It's like the Hamleys of wine, if you prefer wine to LOL dolls and Barbies. And wine is delivered to you. You get to taste it, but you also get to taste it in the company of myself and the company of Greg and some of the winemakers. So it's a really fun initiative. It's one I'm really excited about. And to that end, I thought I'd rope in my fellow conspirators in putting this all together. One of them is Greg, who we'll talk to in a moment. But first up, Jo from Wines of South Africa. We kind of had this conversation, Jo, when we did the live tasting, suggesting we should do some sort of wine tasting. It's come about quite quickly. I'm really excited. And this is a great opportunity to take some top South African wine to the UK market.
Yeah, and well, thanks very much, Dan, for supporting this idea, because we're really excited. I think any kind of opportunity to get together, talk about South Africa, drink South African wine. Yeah, a lot of support for South Africa in the UK market. And I think, anything that we can do to maximize that, get people drinking our wines, enjoying our wines. For some people, maybe experiencing South Africa for the first time.
Jo, something we alluded to the last time we spoke was the change in perception of South African wine. No longer just seen as entry level, as cheap supermarket fare. A couple of quid and you've got yourself a bottle you can choke down. There's a little way to go, but people are definitely now seeing South African wine in far better light, which is fabulous. Without bigging us up too much, I'd like to think that this wine club, the conversations that we'll have, will also help us push in that direction and get people to realize that top-end South African wine really is a match for top-end wine anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, completely. And it's been amazing seeing the engagement we've had with the UK consumers in premium South African wine. And, I think we've certainly got people like Greg to thank for that, because we've had supporters really, banging the drum and trying to get people to just try the wines, realize the quality that South Africa delivers, and also, stylistically, that South Africa, although people think of it as a new world country, actually you have a lot of kind of very elegant, refined wines that really sit quite neatly in between the old and the new world. So it's been a real renaissance for South Africa in this market, I think. And it is the kind of the quality that you can get, and it's so exciting to see.
You mentioned Greg having a role to play in that. Let's head over to our South African Welshman in his palatial home in South London and find out just to what extent that is the case. Greg, you get to sell wine from all over the world. Your Fine Wine Safari chronicles some fabulous vintages from different corners of the winemaking planet. But South Africa does hold sway, and rightly so, as a proudly South African. How far down the road are we, do you feel, to the market in the UK understanding the quality of South African wine and putting it on the kind of pedestal that Joe and I, as completely subjective South African wine fans, would like to see it at?
Hi, Dan. Great to be with you. Of course, I'm always going to talk about South African wine in as positive a light as possible. I love the wine. I love the country. I love what all the winemakers have got some great friends. But one of the most important things for me is to write about South African wines on my blog or website in the same context of all the other great fine wines around the world, and not single us out as some kind of, you've got the old world classics and then you've got, South Africa. We are making some of the greatest wines ever. And however positive I have always been, I just really, that where we are with our popularity and support for internationally and in Europe and certainly in the UK, I've not seen anything like it in 20 years. I've got kind of fine wine clients beating the door down to buy some of the wines that, are really sought after, and it's fantastic. And I'm just enjoying placing our best wines on a pedestal for everyone to enjoy and to appreciate.
Which is exactly what we're going to be doing with the South African Wine Tribe. As you may have spotted by now, this is my Bafana jersey from some years back, still fits happily, and wearing it as a proud South African. And I'll be a very proud South African when we celebrate the 3 wines that kick off the South African Wine Tribe, which you can join very simply by emailing Greg at the address below. £91 in total for your 3 bottles, including delivery. And they are 3 terrific bottles. And let's try them out, because we've got all of them with us for this special preview edition of Dan Really Likes Wine. Greg, the first of those takes us to the name Alheit, which is very revered in local wine circles, and up to the Hemelanada Valley. What is the white blend that is getting our maiden selection underway?
So, Dan, we've got the lovely Hemelrand Weidengarten 2016, a fantastic vintage, a hot dry vintage, but a fantastic vintage for Chenin and some of the white varieties that got such amazing concentration. I think this is, if I'm not mistaken, the second vintage of Chris's vineyard fruit, where his winery is actually based in the Hemelanard. And obviously he's well known for all these old vine vineyards from all over the Swartland and Stellenbosch, False Bay. But this is where he's based, where he crafts his magic. And the 2016 is absolutely phenomenal wine. And we're going to be enjoying this fantastic white blend. It's got a good chunk of Chenin Blanc in it. So it's going to have a bit of that pastille fruit, kind of white peach orchard fruits. But with that, it's got a big chunk of, I think, about over 40% of Roussanne, which gives a real nice kind of spicy yellow fruit and textural depth. But then it's also got over 20% of Chardonnay, which is, if handled correctly, can really lend a fantastic texture and kind of complexity to wine outside of the kind of basic Chardonnay mold. So, and 16, hot dry vintage, but they've made fantastically concentrated ripe wines, and I think they are just drinking incredibly well now. So I'm very, very excited to present this wine again to the Wine Tribe tasting.
I'm always a little bit nervous when I go with tasting notes when I'm in the presence of the great Greg Sherwood, Master of Wine. And so I'm going to go very, very technical here and tell you I definitely pick up just a little hint of the yellow fruit pastille you get in the roll when you buy them and you drop in at WH Smith. Terrific blend. And Joe, a nice one for us to start off with as South Africans. We tasted some Chenin together not that long ago. And although this is not 100% Chenin, it does form the basis of this blend. And it allows us to tell the story that is South African Chenin Blanc at the moment. And what a wonderful story that is.
And it's interesting, actually, when people in the UK particularly started really noticing the quality of South African wine, it was the white blends that I think first kind of got people's attention, and that role of Chenin within the blends, but it was definitely our white wines that I think first really grabbed people's attention and said, hang on a minute, South Africa is doing something really exciting here. And then the reds kind of followed on after that. So this wine, I mean, and also his cartology, I think, was a game changer for the image of South African wine. So ever since then, you know, the Al Hayt wines have really just pushed the boundaries. So this is, in terms of kind of summing up where South Africa has come from and that journey, I think this is a really good example of a wine that shows that.
And so the perfect way to kick off these celebrations. So this will be the first bottle that is in your collection with the seal of approval of both Greg and Joe. Mine as well, for what it's worth. We've got one white, we've got two reds, two very different reds, and very deliberately so we can show you some of the cross-section of wine that South Africa can lay claim to. And the second wine that we have, Greg, this is one I know has got you written all over it, because this is made by somebody who you hold in as high esteem as pretty much any winemaker in South Africa.
Yeah, Dan, you know, this is one of my favorites, the Nordier Grenache. I remember visiting Ian at his winery, and he showed me this tank and said, I'm really not sure about it. It's the first time he had ever attempted to make a Grenache. He was already masterful with his white blends and his Cinsaults, but he was just a bit nervous. And it has subsequently turned out to be one of the great Grenaches of South Africa. It's been lauded in many tastings. It's been put into blind tastings against 500-pound, 400-pound Chateau Reyes Grenaches around the world. And every time it's kind of come on top. And, you know, Ian's a modest guy, so he's not going to big himself up, but he really is up there. And I regard him as one of the best winemakers in South Africa. And he was certainly one of the mentors to all the young guys like Eben Sadi and that. And, you know, in the early days, Ian's been around, and it's a fantastically exciting wine. And we're so pleased that 2019, he managed to get the vineyards back, and he's busy nurturing the new release. But we're going to taste the 2014, which is fantastic wine, and a great effort. Classic Grenache, all the kind of brambly, almost kind of some foresty Pinot Noir characters that you can get, but with this kind of lightness, elegance, and a super mineral kind of structure and freshness. So super exciting. And I think Ian will be joining us, and he can tell you of his trepidation of making this wine. Grenache is not an easy grape to master, can be incredibly reductive. It can really kick you when you're down. So it's going to be exciting. And I think tasters will really get a great story out of this one.
Yeah, I think this is very much the hidden gem of our collection. We talked when we did our tasting, Joe, about the other big wine for South Africa at the moment that you felt was emerging was Cinsault. Ian does a great Cinsault. His Grenache gets plenty of acclaim from Mr. Sherwood, but it's also great, not dissimilar to Cinsault. It's got that lightness, which is, it's not a style that people often associate with South Africa. We're kind of known with the Reds, it's the rugby players of wine. It's big and heavy and broad-shouldered and Stellenbosch, whereas this, is all of our Wine Tribe members are going to discover, it shows a totally different side of South Africa and celebrates the scope of wine that we're capable of making.
Yeah, I think that's very accurate, and I think again, it's been really interesting to see our winemakers really discovering what the terroir can do, going for those more delicate styles that, as you say, 10 years ago you wouldn't have expected from South Africa, but showing that we're capable of doing those styles of wines that are sort of more delicate, more elegant, and there are still people that love those sort of big, rich, full-bodied styles, but I just think it shows the breadth of winemaking possibilities that South Africa has, that we can see wines like this. And also Ian's been a real advocate of the old vine story, which again is something that has been quite a game changer for South Africa in terms of image building, that the story of the Old Vine Project and how these vineyards have been rescued and sort of nurtured back to life is such an exciting part of the South African wine story.
And it's a story we will be telling with great delight on the 22nd of July. Reminder again, you can see Greg's email address scrolling across the bottom. Just send him your details and you can join us for those 3 terrific bottles of wine with winemakers and myself and Greg, celebrating that wonderful white blend, celebrating that Grenache, and then celebrating a wine that, well, there's a little bit of sleight of hand in this almost, because it comes from Burkhartskloof, who've got multiple claims to fame. They do the Wolf Trap wine, they've got the Porcupine Ridge, their chocolate block is world famous, or just about. And then there's the Burkhartskloof range itself sitting at the very top. But although Burkhartskloof sits in Franschhoek, this wine doesn't actually come from Franschhoek. In fact, Mr. Sherwood, this comes from an area that is as exciting as any in South Africa at the moment from a winemaking perspective.
Yep, Dan. So this is the 2015 of the Burkhartskloof, and if I'm not mistaken, it's probably the first vintage where they sourced all the fruit from their 2 estates in the Swartland. So it's wine of origin Swartland from Porcelainberg of 80%, and it's a fantastic, classic Swartland, rich, opulent style. So if the Grenache is maybe the coiffed winger, kind of looking for the break, this is certainly the forward with incredible denseness, richness, and fantastic appeal. And it's one that South Africans obviously have grown to love massively. Super sought after wine in South Africa, as it is even in the UK. And the other fruit is sourced just on a farm next door to actually the Mullinoes, who are super famous, and 20% of the blend. So 2015, what iconic vintage. I mean, what a wine to add to the selection for the first Wine Tribe experience. It's going to be fantastic, really exciting.
It allows us, Joe, to finish with an almighty flourish. It also allows us to travel out to the Swartland, and that's quite a nice way to wrap up our first session of the South African Wine Tribe, because the Swartland is driving so much excitement, so much innovation, and so much interest in South African wine at the moment.
Yes, and again, you know, I think we've done a good job of sort of picking wines that really do tell the story of South Africa in recent years. The Swartland was an area that nobody had really heard of out of South Africa, and then because the producers there got together and really sold the region, also, you know, developed a philosophy around winemaking, and suddenly the Swartland just sort of burst onto the wine scene across the world, and I think has actually helped other regions within South Africa to come together and tell their stories as well. So that tale of regionality has been really solidly put together for South Africa now, not just in the Swartland, and you know, traditional areas like Stellenbosch now are kind of coming together and telling their story. So I think it's a really good example of, you know, how South Africa can, you know, talk about again, it's the variety on offer and all the different regions, but I think Swartland was just such a trailblazer.
Greg, you've given us a wonderful trio. You can see how excited Joe is. I am equally so as we prepare for the maiden outing of the South African Wine Tribe. You do so many wine events. You travel around the world. You're in demand to be everywhere all of the time. How excited is Greg Sherwood about the South African Wine Tribe?
Dan, it's great. Whenever I can get the opportunity to enthuse people and get people excited about South African wines, I certainly take the opportunity, because I know it's such a great proposition and people get so excited and they come away, even if they know the wines, they think, wow, that was really good. You know, it just reminds them of how good the wines are. And if they've not tasted some of these wines or have only heard about them, they will certainly walk away thinking, wow, you know, these are fantastic wines. And there's a reason why we are, well, we're not flavor of the month, we are flavor of the almost decade. We've just been going on and on and on. And we're losing none of our luster, certainly here in the UK. And I can tell you, even my French friends in Bordeaux and in Europe, you know, they're buying more and more South African wines from and making their importers ship the stuff in, you know, and the wines are so exciting and they're so talked about that traditional markets are changing, and certainly the UK has been a massive supporter. So I'm very excited to help, along with your expertise, lead our tasters through three of these fantastic wines, and hopefully many more in the future.
Joe, in wrapping up, as we prepare to join everybody on the 22nd of July, 7 p.m. British Standard Time for our tasting, how confident, excited are you about South African wine at the moment as it continues to make headway in the UK market?
You know, it's fantastic to have the support of you, Dan, and Greg to champion our wines. It's really brilliant. I think we've got a fantastic selection of wines. I think people will really enjoy sitting down, opening them, hearing you guys chat about them, hearing from our winemakers, and just getting some really good bottles open. So we're delighted.
So smiles all around, hopefully smiles that you will be sharing come the 22nd of July. So very simple recap. It is the South African Wine Tribe. And to join, you simply drop an email to Greg at Hanford Wines, details on screen at the moment. Tell him you'd like to get involved. The cost for the very first one is £91. That is 15% off the regular price of those wines. And it includes your delivery anywhere in the mainland UK. So that is England, Scotland, or Wales. And once that wine is delivered, we will send you an invitation to join us online for a virtual tasting with myself, Greg, and a couple of those winemakers led by Ian Nordeer, who's very much an unsung hero of the South African wine industry. And I cannot wait, sharing some great South African wine with friends across the UK. And we look forward to having you on board as we kick off the first edition of the South African Wine Tribe. So look out for that. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today. Please, if you are in the UK or you've got friends in the UK, send it on, share the gospel. We'd love to have some more people, not just South African, people from anywhere, just enjoying that wine and celebrating South Africa with us. So that is Dan Really Likes Wine with Pick and Pay for this week. Don't forget the other wine club to join is the Pick and Pay Wine Club. I know we can't buy wine at the moment, but if you're not a member, you should be. It's free of charge, gets you those extra smart shopper points, gets you free delivery, and gets you some terrific discounts on fabulous South African wine, not unlike the wine that we will be drinking with the South African Wine Tribe on the 22nd of July, 7 p.m. British Standard Time, with myself, Greg Sherwood, Wines of South Africa, and the winemakers. Look forward, if you are part of it, to seeing you then. Otherwise, every Monday and Thursday for live tastings, as lockdown notwithstanding, we continue to celebrate the wonder that is South African wine. Enjoy and cheers.